So, welcome to this conversation. Venkaji, thank you so much for being here. This is one of the Living Bridges conversations that we're having this month to raise awareness around the value of empathy, collaboration, and the spirit of giving in the context of social change. Maybe we could just begin with, uh, if you're open to it, sharing a little bit about you. If could you, I know a little bit about you in terms of Give India, and I know how supportive you've been to our causes and to so many causes across India for a while. And kind of watching you from afar with some of your social media posts, I'm constantly learning from you. But I'd love to know a bit more about what brought you to this line of work, and who would you be willing to share?
Sure. I'm not sure what to say though. I'm just an ordinary guy. I mean, uh, you know, ordinary, but also as all kinds of data keep reminding us in that top 1% in terms of being privileged.
Right.
Uh, Born and brought up in a middle class family, never had to worry about any of the basics. Never had shortage of drinking water or food or clothing or medical help in childhood, etc. And I mean, as we know, for those of us who look at the data, if you survived your fifth birthday, you're already like part of 90%
Yeah.
of, you're not in the bottom 10% straight away. And if you grew up healthy, fully nourished, not malnourished at all, then you're already in the top 30-40% of this country, etc. So from that point of view, I would say we were in the top 10%. We were never luxurious, we were never rich, but we were still like very comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's so. Everything else about my life is what we call the classic Indian middle class. Everything, going to school, studying hard, working, playing, all of that stuff, working towards a career, starting a career, and then all of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm just a normal guy. I think that's the best way I can possibly
Yeah.
describe myself.
Yeah. Well, what I'm getting is it's about there's something almost like you have a sense of being like a lot of other people in the country, but I also hear some specific awareness around both privilege and the fact that privilege can make us very comfortable. We have a comfortable life, and going beyond that comfort can be so difficult sometimes. And I would be so curious to know what is it that pushed you beyond that comfort of that privilege, because the work that you do contributes to so many people across the world. No, what made you take that step beyond that line of comfort?
I mean, today there's a very interesting article in the newspapers that talks about the inequality report, and
Right.
just says that right now the top 1% in India makes you know 20 times what the rest of the country makes, so much more than that. And the bottom 50% of the country makes like 7 or 8% of the income that this
Yeah.
country creates, etc. So, and there were two. I don't think there are instant moments. Like it's not like one specific incident happened that triggered anything, but two broad sets of things that happened in life. One was in class 5 when we shifted to where I currently stay for the last 40 years. We went into a school which was actually a truly mixed school. So we had children from the poorest slums of the city, maybe not in the poorest slums, but from the slums of our locality, and kids who came from well-to-do homes. Like, in Bombay, a two-bedroom house is like a
Yeah.
really rich person's
That's a
house.
palace as far as Bombay goes. Yes.
Especially in those days, we are talking now of the late 70s and early 80s. You had to be super privileged to own a 2 BHK. We didn't, for example, right? So it was an entire spectrum of people, and spending 5 years with all of them as friends, I think deep down it was keeping on getting to me, which is that where you're born makes such a big difference to your life. Like,
Yeah.
the friends who were staying in slums would not have electricity at home. It was erratic in those days, even in Bombay, in the slums. Whereas हमारे घरों पे तो मतलब power supply is Bombay, unlike Delhi, has always had uninterrupted power supply. That's
Right.
like one of our privileges that we've been born and brought up with.
Yeah.
And therefore, when you have to study at night, all of those are non-issues. You don't even recognize the fact that somebody else may want to study at home in the night but can't, even if they want to.
Sure.
So all these little things, or the fact that you could afford, many of my friends used to go to tuitions. Some of them I used to take tuitions for and make money out of also. But the fact that you could afford tuitions, whereas there's somebody else who can't ever dream of it, you know, or that, and there are lots of little things like, for example, you know, we all had to cover our notebooks with brown paper in those days. I don't know if kids even use notebooks nowadays, but in those days it was compulsory to cover your notebooks with brown paper.
Yeah.
And you would get a large sheet of plain brown paper for 35 paise, and there was this glossy plastic laminated brown sheet that was 1 rupee a sheet. And just the fact that somebody can afford that and the other can't afford that, and their notebooks look different itself, right? When they're going to the teacher, because one is glossily covered and the other is this thing. And वो जो भेदभाव है, ऊंच नीच है, even inclusive school, one could see all those differences and how those differences play on the psyche of the person, and just the plain old opportunities that you have and access you have, right? I mean, what happens to a kid who loses his compass because you buy one geometry box at the beginning of the 5th or 6th standard and you're supposed to keep it for 5 years. Those days, you know, even middle class people used to have those values. कि भाई 5 साल तो एक geometry box चला दिया और compass हो गया, तो नया compass 1.5 रुपए का आता था, तभी 11.5 रुपए का Camlin का box होता था पूरा, and you could not afford 1.5 rupees.
Right.
So what happens to that kid? They will have to keep borrowing their neighbor's compass for the next 4 years, and वो जो शर्म आता है मांगने में, and how you feel terrible about yourself, and all these things and the impact. So I think just seeing that over 4 years or 5 years, actually 6 plus 5 to 10, so 6 years, had a deep impact on me. That you know, a lot of us are going to be successful in life not because we have done anything khas, but just because we were born in the right place.
Right.
So that had a strong impression on me.
Yeah.
The second was at the, you know, since I had a very short corporate career, 2.5, 3 years, but at the peak of that, so when we were I was part of the founding team that was setting up Sony Entertainment Television in India. And, you know, the founders and some of us, we used to go out, we used to work late because we used to work very hard. It was a startup kind of culture. But, you know, we would go, our office was in Andheri East, we would go to Holiday Inn for dinner. And I'm now talking of 1996, right? 96 or 95, 1995. And we would go to Holiday Inn for dinner, और हम 3 लोग होते थे, 3,500-4,000 रुपए का बिल आता था एक रात का. And you come out, and outside, right outside Holiday Inn Juhu, there used to be these families that would live in a you know, black tarpaulin sheet ke niche on the pavement. And in those days, those families didn't have incomes of 3,500 rupees a month, even in Bombay, right? Even if you were a daily wage laborer or something like that. And just the stark, I don't know, I mean, call it obnoxious or call it whatever it was, it just used to keep rankling. So I think pretty much a lot of these kind of experiences cumulatively made me realize that, you know, those of us who have whatever we have done really nothing to deserve it. We only ought to have a sense of gratitude. And the only thing we can do is to pay it back, because, you know, honestly, none of us knows whether there is another life, rebirth, rebirth and all. I mean, even those who believe there is none can't say it with surety. All I can say is, agar aisa koi cheez ho bhi ki rebirth hai, and if I was to be reborn as a garage mechanic's son, I would wish that somebody else was kind to me. Right. And, you know, and therefore, I believe if one can exhibit whatever one can in terms of gratitude and kindness, to matlab arrogance ho gaya in a way to call it kindness. I would say it's like, yes, the duty one has to do, that, you know, do whatever you can to reduce the unfairness.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm getting that the awareness and being exposed to issues early on had quite a transformative impact on you. And I can imagine कि कहीं ना कहीं keeps needling कि हाँ, this is what I spent on my food, and this is what I know a family can't afford to spend on their entire months in, you know.
And honestly, it happens even today, right? I mean, every once in a while, I do try and keep my life as simple as I can, but every once in a while I do go out with friends और फिर हम मतलब दारू पीते हैं, खाना खाते हैं, तो एक आदमी पे 1500-2000 रुपया खर्चा हो जाता है. And it does rankle. It does
Absolutely.
make me तब नहीं at that point of time nothing, but later on बाद में आके लगता है कि यार जरूरी था क्या ये करना, मतलब.
I find it interesting because you're also drawing on the kind of shame that can be attached to looking at our own privilege, like the rankling or the guilt that shows up when we look at our privilege.
Maybe guilt, I don't know, but it is actually, I don't think it is even guilt.
Right.
It is just a very realistic assessment of what is right and what is wrong, right? I mean, we are the country that says Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. You know, Bill Gates famously said that in his giving, for him, a child in the US or a child in India is the same.
Yeah.
I mean, in a Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam concept, you know, the child in the nearby slum and my nephew are the same.
Yes. Yeah.
But I won't hesitate to spend 2,000 rupees for my nephew's birthday, but I will, you know, I will not give 2,000 rupees per child's birthday for a million other children.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just that, it's just fighting the innate nature, human nature to treat ourselves first and then our immediate circle as something that is deserving of a little more.
It's almost like expanding that circle to include.
All one has to do is to keep expanding that circle, keep saying that, boss, no, I mean, if that person can get by with that, why should I deserve anything more?
Yeah.
So it's less about guilt and more about A, recognizing privilege, and B, constantly reminding oneself that this arrogance that I deserve what I have.
Right.
So it's not guilt, it's not shame, it's more about removal of arrogance, if at all.
Like a kind of a awareness that this idea that I deserve this, that word deserve almost takes me away from the common humanness of the other person. Like the fact that I'm the same as this person, it's just that I was born slightly different.
Correct.
I want to draw our conversation towards Give India, or the idea of giving, not just Give India, but because I believe you've also shifted on from that, but just the idea of giving. Because earlier in your description of the school scenario, you were mentioning how there can be a lot of shame in asking, and there's a sort of contradiction there, or a kind of balancing, complementary aspect of the joy in giving, or the joy of giving, if you will. Would you like to say a bit about that? What is it about giving that is so powerful?
Yeah. No, I think there's two things. One is when you giving brings a lot of joy. I think that's fairly evident. I mean, it's been said in the Bible 2,000 years back. It's been said in Indian religious texts, Hinduism, in Islam, in Zakat, in Sadaqah, in the Jewish Torah, whichever document you look at the Guru Granth Sahib, there also it will say the same thing about how giving and being of help to others is actually the biggest source of joy. One is, of course, it is said, but it's also experienced. You know, I mean, when you go back to those childhood circumstances, maybe that child felt ashamed to keep asking, but I don't remember ever when I shared my compass with another kid feeling any sense of like anything other than happiness.
Right.
That I was able to help, be of help.
Yeah.
Right. And I think whenever we do something not out of compulsion, the kind of giving that people feel very pulled away from is when there is aggressive sales-based fundraising, right? So when organizations like literally telecall you and push you, and there are people coming door to door and knocking, and then you finally give money to get rid of them. I honestly don't know whether that is even giving. That is just like kind of buying peace.
Yes, right. Buying peace of mind.
Right.
Yeah.
But many of us do buy insurance also to just buy peace because of that pestering relative, and you want to get rid of them. So you'll say, "ठीक है यार, 600 रुपया premium भर देता हूँ, उसका दिमाग तो नहीं चाटेगा कम से कम."
No.
And but true giving, when you actually give because you want to, whether it is to a beggar, and again, they're not because it's a beggar who's been knocking continuously on your glass, but because you were just moved to feel like doing something of that kind. or for example, helping your mate's child learn by tutoring them at home, or any such thing that we do. I've invariably found that there is a lot of joy it gives to anybody, not just me. Anybody who does that kind of giving, it you naturally feel much better about yourself. And there is enough science now, Harvard case studies, etc., etc. There's like science where they network the brain to all these devices and found that there is a huge, high that you get every time you're giving.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very clear that people enjoy giving.
In fact, I think this is the reason I'm really moved to hear you say that. Is this is exactly the reason that so the nonviolent communication work that we do, the first chapter in that book is about giving from the heart, and it talks about how it's absolutely fundamental to human nature to be giving to one another without the expectation of receiving, because giving in itself becomes a kind of receiving. And I've heard it so many times over the last year from relief workers and social activists that it's like when you're doing this work of contributing food to someone, or you're delivering medicines or whatever, it's almost serving myself, although
Absolutely.
in an outward way I'm serving the other in some way. But maybe in that's what you're saying, that there is no difference between the other person and me, we're the same. So when I give to you, I'm also somehow giving to me, and I'm really touched by that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I want to also maybe just like sort of a question around any key things that people can keep in mind when they step into this field of giving, anything that you might want to draw their awareness to.
I mean, I'd say a bunch of things actually. First is that when you step into this field of giving, so to say, I would say we must start with deep humility, and far too few of us do that. There is too much arrogance in the giver. There is too much sense that मैं दे रहा हूँ.
Oh.
And there is that famous doha about Tulsidas, and which ends with that taso niche nain. I'm sure you'll find it very easily. दिन हार कोई और है, लेन हार कोई और. लोग हम पर भरम करे तासो नीचे नैन. Which is that the giver is somebody else. If you believe in God, then God. If you believe in luck, then luck.
Right.
You have what you have because of luck. लेन हार कोई और, the receiver is somebody else. People mistakenly think I am some big generous giver. That's why I keep my eyes low when I give. I think that humility is perhaps the first and most important thing that people need to learn as givers. Second, I would say is humility does not mean that you become blindly supportive of anybody and everybody who approaches you. By all means, so like Gandhiji used to say, we are all a trustee of the wealth that is with us. But if you are a trustee, then upon you also comes the duty to ensure that that money is getting used well. So asking questions, ensuring that the money is going to the right cause, checking whether it is being spent well, efficiently, effectively. Those are all parts of a good giver's duty. And that doesn't make you arrogant. Right?
Absolutely. That makes you discerning and
that makes you
effective
in your own duty of ensuring that it is reaching the right place. But yeah, I would say that as long as you're able to do that without arrogating to yourself this thinking, I have a right to ask this because I have the money, versus I have a duty to ask this because I am a trustee of this money.
Right. Yeah.
I think there is just such a big difference between these two.
Yeah.
And many of us, myself included, probably fall into the trap of this: I am giving, therefore I have a right. Instead of I am trying to help and therefore I have a duty.
Right. And that's such an important shift. It's almost like you're talking about, as you say this, I'm thinking about organizational trustees in nonprofits especially, and how there's a kind of stewardship of the resources that they have access to, and the idea that you really, every decision you take has an impact, and so you really have to do it very discerningly. It's almost like you're suggesting we could be a global trust. There is a trust that all of us are stewards of, anybody with any kind of privilege. And in being discerning, we can make conscious choices about where this money goes. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm also kind of really moved by this word humility. I think I relate with it deeply. And a while back, I had this idea that it's almost like it comes hand in hand with the stewarding, that you're just the channel through which something is happening. It's not even that I might have all the plans I want, but sometimes plans don't work, and yet something happens through me. And to be able to trust that, to be able to lean into that trust is such a valuable thing. Yeah. So I'm I'm very keen to keep going, and at the same time, I don't want to, appropriate all of your time, because I know you have lots to do.
No, sure.
But I want to say thank you so much for this. This is such a deeply learning conversation. I'm finding a lot of resonance and warmth in it. Would you have anything you want to say before we formally close?
No, I'd just like to wish you all the best, because I think the work you're doing is very important. Building bridges is something that this country and probably this world needs far more than ever before. We're going through difficult times where, we're all fighting with each other. We've been taught to focus more on our differences than on our similarities.
Yeah.
And I mean, going back to what we said right at the beginning, we are all the same. And, giving is one way of trying to realize that, but what you guys are doing in trying to build bridges between people is an equally important way of getting everyone to realize that we are all the same. So all the best in your work, and thank you.
Thank you so much. So that brings our conversation to a close. And for anybody who's watching, all details for our fundraiser are in the description. And watch this space for much, much more. Thank you so much, Venkatji, for this. This was just a pure delight.
Thank you.